recording.
Here we are, folks. Welcome back to High Water Trekko podcast.
Thank you for tuning in.
Yes, thank you very much.
We're going to try to get it together and deliver an episode to you guys today, but no guarantees.
It's been a very distracting day. We decided to come down to the river to record because we haven't recorded outside for a while. But there are some folks who I think were having some car issues, so there's been a lot of noises and distraction.
But we're going to take a stab at it here, and hopefully it goes well.
We're sorry.
Yeah, in advance, we apologize. But again, thank you for tuning in. I'm Sam.
I'm Katy.
And I think today we're going to talk to you guys, well, maybe start a series of episodes that we'd like to see, that we'd like to continue working on, and that is something that Katy aptly named Trail Ailments.
Yes.
Which we may now shorten at times to Trailments.
Which I love. I kind of want to make a sticker now.
I think we just kind of want to talk to you guys about your bodies and the things that can go wrong on trail.
Yes, and we've each tried to stick to like a smaller topic instead of doing that thing that we do sometimes where we try to cover too much. So hopefully this will flow through pretty well. We'll see.
We'll see how we do with that.
I'm feeling very river relaxed, so I feel like I'm going to struggle to say science things more so than I might normally.
Maybe not. We'll see. I just can't even talk at all, so it's better to stumble over your words than just go mute, I suppose.
I know. I usually just go mute and then I'm just listening through the headphones in absolute dead silence.
Well, today you can listen to the birds and the bugs because we do have the pleasure of sitting outside and it is a gorgeous day. And summer is just right on our doorsteps, it seems like.
I'm ready for some getting in the river time.
Me too.
So I recently stopped by to check on my mom's house that she has in town, and I was perusing the books that she left behind on the shelf, and she has this book called The Human Body Book that grabbed my attention, so I brought it home to look through, and it has extremely detailed pictures. For some reason, when I was looking through it, it made me think of the Magic School Bus. Did you ever?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Miss Frizzle.
Like, seatbelts, everyone!
Yeah.
And then there's that one kid that's like, please let this be a normal field trip.
Yeah. The
It's
little
like,
ginger kid.
It's like, hey, my guy. Come on.
I know.
Also, I just wanted to ask, when you were young, did your school bus have seatbelts?
No.
Okay. Because I only went to public school in kindergarten and first grade, and I'm like, there were not seatbelts.
I still don't think they're seatbelts. I don't think that's a thing. I don't think so.
Okay, so that's also magic, apparently. But this book made me think of that one episode where they're inside of the human body for some reason.
That's exactly the episode that I was thinking of.
Yes, and I always thought that the cells looked like red lifesavers. So all of that is just a weird aside, but for some reason when I was looking through the pictures in that book, that is where my brain went.
I feel like most people of our age are going to really resonate with the Magic School Bus reference.
Yeah.
Are kids these days watching that? I don't know.
Is it still around? It's probably on some streaming platform. Anyways.
Yeah. Let's get all Miss Frizzle up in here.
Yeah. With Miss Frizz? No way! Okay. So I want to talk about infections today. And the main reason that I chose this topic is because I recently came across a post in one of the hiking groups by a man who had to drop out of his through hike because of a blister that he got that went very, very bad. And by very, very bad, I mean infected to the point that he required not one, but multiple surgeries. And I sent this post to Sam. There's pictures, there's a video of the wound vac sucking the fluid out. It's gnarly.
It's intense. Yeah.
So that just kind of got me thinking about how many different little trailments we might encounter and how maybe on their own they're a very small issue, but they all have the capacity to turn into something much bigger. So, like, as this man experienced a blister, but also any small cut or scrape, maybe we get some bug bites that we've been really aggressively scratching, chafing or heat rashes, poison ivy or oak rashes, maybe a burn from your stove. All of that broken skin is just an entry point for all of the microorganisms and the bacteria that exist all around us, everywhere, every day, in the soil, in the water, on our own skin, just waiting for their opportunity. They honestly kind of have the same vibe to me as questing ticks, where they're just like hanging out and waiting.
Just ready to attack.
So anyway, that's kind of the background behind why I chose infection. But I did kind of want to lead into it a little bit by talking about how our body's protective systems work. And this is mainly thanks to that book, although I did try to really condense it down because this isn't a science podcast, but I feel like it's kind of cool to know what's happening in there. And we learn these things in school, but looking through that book, I was kind of struck all over again by how complex our bodies really are and how many things they're doing without our knowledge just every day, all the time. So anyway, all that aside, our body is protected from hostile forces by our skin and our immune and lymph systems. And I'm going to say right now, I'm probably really going to struggle to say lymph. I don't know why, but it's a hard one for me. So as most of us know, our skin is our largest organ, and it's basically our first line of defense. It's basically a watertight barrier that protects all of our internal goods by keeping bacteria out and our fluids in, which is important. It also assists us with temperature regulation and sends messages via nerves to our brain about hot and cold, pressure, pain, and positions of our body. So the lymphatic system is another really integral part of our immune system, and it plays a significant role in our defense against disease. The active part of the system is lymph fluid, which starts out its life as fluid that's found in the spaces kind of around our cells, and then it drains into networks of tiny capillaries and tissue spaces which come together to form lymph vessels. So the lymph vessels are what brings the lymph to our lymph nodes, and then one larger vessel will carry it away, and they actually have valves to ensure a one-way flow of the fluid, so there's nothing like backing up or doing anything weird. And then the lymph nodes, which are also called lymph glands sometimes, they produce and harbor specialized white blood cells called lymphocytes, and they also are the filtering and storage systems which are dispersed along the routes of the lymph vessels. The lymph fluid from most tissues or organs flows through one or multiple lymph nodes where it's filtered and cleaned, and then it's drained into our bloodstream. So I honestly didn't know how all of that worked. Like, I kind of did, but I had a lot of fun reading about it.
Yeah. The lymph system is super interesting.
It is, and I was going to say, if you're into this kind of thing, like, it's kind of worth looking up a diagram, because it's wild to me to look at this whole network throughout our body and just, like, kind of picture all of this. It's so intricate and, I don't know, impressive.
It is.
We're impressive. So while our blood is pumped through our systems, our lymph fluid moves passively. So when our muscles contract during movement, that will compress lymph vessels that the muscles surround, and that's how the fluid moves. The lymph fluid enters our blood circulation via our left and right subclavian veins, which it looks like are kind of located like right below each of our collarbones. And then our lymphoid organs and tissues complete the system, and they contain large numbers, again, of those lymphocytes, which are specialized to protect our bodies against hostile invasions by microorganisms and other foreign material. Okay, so that's all I'll say about that for now. But again, if you want to look it up, it is super cool to see a diagram of this whole thing. And again, if you can get your little fingers on the human body book, the pictures are amazing.
It's really cool. I just checked it out a little while ago, and it's a really awesome, informative book.
So our immune responses will include both non-specific responses and specific responses. The non-specific ones are basically a reaction to any kind of damage, whether it's from a physical injury or from, microbes, parasites, all of that invading our bodies. Our main defensive response is usually inflammation. It's our first and most rapid response to what the book called insult or injury, and I don't know why that's so funny to me, but it is, so I had to include it. So our damaged tissues will release chemicals that attract our white blood cells. Blood flow will increase to the area once that inflammatory response is triggered. The blood vessels and capillaries are going to widen, and then the capillary walls become thinner and more porous, more permeable. This allows plasma and fluid to pass more easily into the space between the cells. So at this point, our white blood cells have been alerted by that chemical reaction. They've left our blood and they've arrived on the scene of our damaged tissues. And there's several different kinds that come into play. Neutrophils are among the first to take action. They're very small but very mighty, and they're able to engulf multiple pieces of damaged tissues and bacteria. Monocytes also engulf pathogens. They leave the blood as immature cells, but then once they enter the tissues, they develop into active cells, which are called macrophages. They replace neutrophils, and they're also called big eaters because they consume up to 100 bacteria or similarly sized material before they die. So all of these cells basically surround, engulf, and destroy the invading pathogens. Something else that may happen is our blood may clot to prevent further microbial penetration, and yes, I intentionally use that word, and to seal the leak or the wound. So anyways, we can recognize inflammation by the very obvious swelling, redness, warmth, and pain or discomfort. I also need to make it known, I wasn't going to include this, but the classical terms for redness, swelling, heat, and pain are rubor, tumor, calor, and dolor.
Okay. Which,
for some reason, when I read those, the first thing that I thought of was like some old farmer's prized hounds. I could just see him being like, that there's rubor. Like, he ain't the sharpest tool in the shed, but he can tree a coon in 5 minutes. I don't know why rubor sounds like a dog name.
It would make a good dog's name.
I kind of like it. So the inflammation process, if successful, will attack, break down, and remove all the invading material, dead or alive, dispose of our body's damaged cells and tissues, and initiate healing. A moment of silence for all of our fallen defensive cells.
Oh.
Bless them.
Well done, soldiers.
Gone but not forgotten. Your sacrifices appreciated. So that was non-specific response. The specific responses, they might occur alongside the non-specific response, or they might happen afterwards if the infection is more persistent. There are 2 types of specific responses, cell-mediated and antibody-mediated. Both of these depend on 2 different kinds of lymphocytes, B and T. B cells make protein antibodies called gamma globulin, which react against foreign protein substances, aka antigens, that are different from our body's own proteins. And then T cells multiply and attack pathogen cells. So in a cell-mediated immunity response, this one involves the T cells. Once a T cell pinpoints the antigen, it multiplies rapidly, and then its wee babies differentiate into several types, including helper cells, memory cells, and suppressor cells. The helper T cells activate the B cells to help antibody-mediated immunity, and they also activate macrophages, those big eaters, to engulf the microbes and debris. Killer T cells, which, side note, we came across these guys in the mental health episode. If you remember, the people who were exposed to terpenes had higher elevated levels of killer T cells, so they showed like higher immune response, and it made me very happy to come across these little guys for some reason again. I was like, oh, I remember them!
That's awesome.
I love it. I get really excited when I actually remember something, which sounds terrible, but I have trouble retaining information these days, so...
Just to see that kind of full circle is super fascinating, and it just kind of organically showed itself, so...
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
So the killer Ts attack both microorganisms and then any body cells infected with them. And then the suppressor Ts, they suppress the response of other cells to invading microbes. And the memory cells retain the memory of the antigen so we can use it in the future.
Wow.
Again, so much going on inside our bodies without us knowing.
That's really cool.
So in an antibody-mediated immunity response, unlike the more direct attack approach of the T cells, our B cells are a little more remote, and they attack invaders by producing chemicals called antibodies, which most of us have probably heard of. Each type of antibody will act against a particular microorganism by attaching to the antigens on its surface. The presence of antigens will trigger the B cells to multiply, and then some will develop into plasma cells, which are our body's main antibody-producing cells, and then they also produce more memory cells, which help our body recognize the same antigen and initiate defense many, many years down the line. So all of that was probably way more information than you wanted or hoped for, but it's just an overview of what's happening inside our bodies when our tissue is damaged in some way, when bacteria, pathogens, or other foreign substances have gained entry. Also, separate fun fact, I didn't really know where to put this, but it's also, if you're dealing with an infection, you may also be dealing with pus. And so I read that pus is a mixture of white blood cells and invading microorganisms, both living and dead, as well as fluids, toxins, and general debris that gather in a confined infected space, like between two sets of tissues. And I didn't know that. And
ew.
Now you know.
Ew.
Gross.
Yeah.
And when you have like a wound that involves pus, there's also kind of a risk of an abscess, which is nasty. And if you have a cat, chances are at some point you've dealt with an abscess, because they're really bad about getting those. Anyway, pus, guys.
Pus.
That's pus. So also, like, I know that word has always just been a struggle for me. I don't understand its spelling. I don't know why it is what it is.
Why is that word?
I don't know. I feel like it should be spelled like puss is spelled.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't, the one S thing doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, it's kind of suiting because pus is gross and the word pus is uncomfortable for me. So
It is.
I guess it makes sense in that way. Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about pus.
We should do a whole episode on pus. Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
I was thinking, I wish that we could get people to send their, like, grossest trail injury stories to us. 'Cause I just feel like that would be fun to read through some of those.
It would be fascinating. I love hearing random experiences that people have, too.
I know, especially when they're, like, that just way out of left field freak thing that happens.
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
Let me learn from your freak experience, so maybe might know how to deal with it if it ever rises for me. So if you're listening and you have like a freak accident, injury, trailment story, please send it to us.
Got a story about pus?
Yeah.
Got pus?
We gotta quit.
Stop. Okay. So
I'm not cutting any of that out either, just so you know.
What I love is how I just keep saying pus, but then, like, in the background, I'm also just registering the most lovely, delightful bird song. It doesn't go together at all.
It is a gorgeous day right now. The breeze just picked up just in time for this pus conversation.
All right. So, mainly what I have just talked about is a localized skin infection, which you might also just hear called cellulitis. Mm-hmm. It affects just the skin and the soft tissue of the skin. So if this initial localized battle against the foreign invaders is lost, that's when we're at risk of the infection becoming systemic. So this basically just means that the organisms have made their way into our body via our blood and our lymph fluid, and we're now at risk of them invading other parts of our body. This is not something that we probably are going to worry about in our day-to-day lives happening from a little cut or whatever, because we probably have access to endless running water, cleaning agents, ointments, and we could probably pretty easily get a prescription for antibiotics before things spiraled out of control. But out on trail, we're probably going to be way more limited with our resources. Or also, I feel like we may just be caught up and not paying attention. I think a lot of us get into a groove and we might even ignore something as simple as like stopping to address a hot spot before it becomes a blister, because we're just kind of in that rhythm and we don't want to stop. So either way, a systemic infection is not something to play around with. If an infection moves beyond that localized damaged tissue, it can progress into something far more serious and in many cases life-threatening.
Really?
So you could get something like necrotizing fasciitis, where this tissue beneath our skin is destroyed. You could be dealing with a bone infection, organ damage, or sepsis, which I think most of us have heard of, which is our body's most extreme response to an infection, and it can be very, very deadly. So if we have a cut, burn, blister, any sort of superficial injury that has escalated beyond that rubor, tumor, cowler, and dolor without healing, we do need to be on the lookout for more severe symptoms of a systemic infection. There's a lot, but some of them could include having red streaks radiating away from the site, having swollen lymph nodes, which again, this is why it's a good idea to kind of look up those pictures and be maybe a little bit familiar with some of these glands are. Dizziness, confusion, disorientation, delirium, or other changes in your mental state. You could have slurred speech, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, rapid heartbeat, shortness of breath. You could have fever, or alternatively, you could have a very low body temperature, chills and shivering. You could have cold, clammy, pale, or mottled skin. Don't like the word mottled either. Thanks for that. You can also have very warm or very hot skin, severe muscle pain, decreased urination, and loss of consciousness. So these are a lot of the most extreme symptoms, and they may not all be present, of course. You know, infections, if you're going to get them, they're probably going to develop pretty quickly. I think I read, like, within the first 24 hours, so...
Wow.
I don't know. I think other times it takes a while, but like you're usually going to be able to start picking up on some of these things. So, if we're out on trail and we get a wound, our main course of action is going to be to control bleeding, to clean and dress the wound, and then to monitor for infection. If your wound is a larger open wound, controlling bleeding is going to be the first and most important step. There are 4 methods for doing this depending on the severity of the wound. Direct pressure, elevation, pressure points, and tourniquets. We're mostly going to use direct pressure in the fields and maybe in some cases elevation. Pressure points, I was reading, aren't all that effective on their own. They're just basically where you apply pressure to a vein to try to like slow down the blood flow. So they're kind of a supplemental. And then tourniquets are really a last resort that should only be used by someone who knows what they're doing, because they could go wrong and end up making things worse.
I've heard that, yeah. And hopefully none of you will be needing a tourniquet.
Right. For the sake of today's conversation, I feel like hopefully we're dealing with more minor issues and not some situation where you like have bone protruding out of your skin or something horrible.
Right, just go to the hospital.
Yeah, that's going to be an evacuate situation.
But this is a fascinating conversation because what we are talking about and what you're talking about is how something small, little bitty, can turn into a life-threatening situation. It may not start out that way, needing a tourniquet, but you may end up in danger of losing a limb or something if you don't.
Oh,
so it is just as serious, in a way.
Like this man with the blister, if he hadn't made the decision, like, oh, when he did to go get this taken care of, like, he's already dealing with surgery, but too much longer, and he could have been dealing with amputation.
Right.
You know? Like, that's insane to me to think that a blister can lead to that.
I'd say he wasn't too far off because the man has like a cave in his foot where there used to be tissue.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe we'll look this post up and link it for anyone who has the same like morbid fascination.
Yeah.
It's like, ugh. It is so gross. I mean, trigger warning. It's disgusting. And I think it's even, like, flagged as sensitive content. So you do have to, like, actively click on it and be like, I'm okay with looking at this, so.
But be ready. It's rough.
Okay. Yes, so we're probably going to be using direct pressure to control bleeding. So you're going to use your hand. And this is where, if you happen to have a pair of latex gloves in your first aid kit, that would be great. But if you don't, just use your hand and then something clean, like maybe gauze, to apply pressure directly over the wound for about 5 minutes and then very slowly release it. If it starts bleeding again, you're going to apply pressure for 15 more minutes. You could also go the route of doing a pressure bandage, which is essentially the same thing, but instead of physically holding it, you're just going to secure the gauze over it with like ace bandage or tape, something that's going to hold some pressure down on it. which might be kind of ideal if you were by yourself and you were maybe needing to try to, like, also maybe filter water and multitask. So
that's true.
So, assuming nothing is gushing blood anymore, we're now going to take the time to clean our wound very, very well. So you basically want to think you're not rinsing it, you want to flush it out. Wilderness first aid tells us to treat any wound, no matter how small, as if it's already infected. And I kind of thought that that was a really good rule of thumb, because what better way to avoid it getting infected?
Yeah.
I mean...
I never thought about that, but that makes perfect sense.
I like that. I feel like that is one that's going to stick in my brain from now on. I do really think we just get in the groove sometime, and I actually was listening to a podcast recently where the host was interviewing a wilderness first responder, and he was talking about all kinds of things. Like, he kind of touched on wounds like this, infections and stuff, but also like heat stroke, hypothermia, dehydration, all of it. And it was funny because a really common thread in his stories were that he would be out with groups of people and someone would have some sort of issue, and the similarity between all of them was that none of them spoke up. Like, none of them spoke up about what they were struggling with until it kind of, like, escalated to where they had to. And so he basically was saying, like, you gotta get on top of it, like, you gotta speak up. I think stubbornness is something that's required for backpacking and other similar things, but it can also lead us to kind of ignore problems until they're bigger. So that was something that really stood out to me about that. I'm like, man, for that to be the common thread in all of his anecdotes was kind of interesting to me.
Doesn't really surprise me, though. Backpackers like to be self-reliant.
We do, and I think, you know, if you're with a partner, you have to speak up, but if you're alone, it's also just kind of being honest to yourself. And he gave sort of his gauge, like, beyond your actual physical condition. He gave his kind of personal rule of thumb of, like, if the fun factor has decreased, that's when you might need to consider throwing in the towel. Like, if you are just not enjoying yourself because of this issue that you're dealing with, you probably need to address it and possibly go home.
I love the point that you're making about being honest with yourself. That may be the hardest step.
It is. I'm always like, no, I got this.
I know.
And I will be honest right now that a lot of what I'm saying today, I am a little bit hypocritical on, and it's sort of a do what I say, not as I do, because I've definitely let things get worse than they needed to be. So,
but I don't know about you, but after doing some research like this, I may not always be perfect, but it does make me want to improve upon some of these things.
Me too. It does.
So moving forward, I feel like we're going to do a little bit better on taking care of some of this stuff.
Yeah, and I'm ready to beef up my first aid kit after this. And I just wanted to throw out there for people that hike with a partner too, like, when you're solo, it's all on you to carry that weight. But I would say if you have kind of a regular hiking buddy, so it'd be a good opportunity to sort of, like, get together and go over some of these things. And, you know, no one person has to carry all of these things, but I feel like that's a good scenario where between the two of you, you could have a pretty fleshed out kit. So
that's a good point.
I'm definitely going to do some evaluating. All right. I lost my train of thought. But basically, you're flushing your wound out. Water and a gentle soap or a saline solution are actually the best thing to use, because some of the harsher antiseptics can damage the skin around the wound. I do understand that we may not have a lot of options on trail. We may just kind of have what we have. So if you have, like, alcohol or iodine, you may have to use that. If you have liquid of those, you could dilute it. I don't know that anyone would be carrying liquid. Personally, I have alcohol prep pads. So I was like, I wonder if I could just kind of steep them in my water. I don't know. But at that point, you could just use water. Also, if you do carry salt at all with you, you could make your own saline solution. It's like half a teaspoon of salt per 8 ounces of water. Or if you carry salt packets, it would be at least 7 packets per 8 ounces of water. So that's an option.
Good tip.
And then it sounds like volume of water is kind of the key here. It's not necessarily as much about what you're flushing your wound with, but it says you want to flush your wound for at least 3 minutes, and you want enough sterilized water to irrigate your wound for 3 minutes. So this is where I was kind of thinking, and again, you're not always going to have this option, but if you have something small that's kind of like starting to go, or even like when you first catch it, I would think maybe you could make it a goal to take a nice long break at your next water source so that you could actively just filter or sterilize as much water as you need. because obviously you can't use like all of your drinking water on your wound.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much water it would take to irrigate a wound for 3 minutes, but it feels like it would be a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Also, if you carry any sort of syringe, or you could consider carrying a syringe in your first aid kit, you can use that to help irrigate the wound because it would have a little more pressure behind it and kind of wash out some of the bigger debris. You could also use tweezers to pick out little pieces of debris. I'm not talking about like a big wound with an embedded object, but if you're just trying to make sure it's all clean, you could maybe use tweezers. So if you flush the wound with water containing some sort of solution or soap, you will just follow it up by rinsing with plain sterilized water. And then if you carry antibiotic ointment, which I think most of us probably do, put it on there. It can help keep infection at bay, but it does also help keep the wound kind of clean and moist, like kind of sealed in a way. They do recommend applying the ointment directly to your gauze or your bandage material instead of to the wound itself, just to reduce the risk of getting contaminants into the ointment. And then you're going to cover it with clean gauze or whatever dressing you have and secure it in place. So, if the wound is like a simple scrape, cut, whatever, this all should be enough. If it's a deeper cut, you may need to use some sort of butterfly bandage to help close it. For what they call avulsions, which are more of a tear than a cut, so if you think of like a blister that has a skin flap, you want to clean it really, really, really well and then reposition the skin flap and secure it with butterfly bandages. And then when you're using butterfly bandages, you want to make sure to leave space like you would see between sutures in case there's any fluid that needs to drain.
Okay.
And then burns can be particularly nasty. This was one that kind of stood out to me because I remember you had that one on the AT and that was a bitch. But also, they're just really, really prone to getting infected and nasty. But also, kind of the first course of action for burns is to cool them, which is not easy to do on trail because your water's not usually cold. And you don't necessarily want to just stick it in a flowing water source because you're kind of inviting bacteria and other things to hop in. So, I honestly hadn't thought about this, but they recommend carrying some sort of burn gel to have a way to cool the burn down without sticking it in potentially contaminated water.
Interesting.
So I was like, well, that's worth it. And you could carry a very small amount. Like, I don't think it would take a whole lot.
Yeah.
So with burns, you want to cool it down. You want to clean it really well, just like any other wound. And then burns need to be protected, but not sealed. So you might bandage them a little differently. I'm not really sure how you're going to protect it from debris without somewhat sealing it. My thought was maybe just like kind of a thinner piece of gauze and tape only around the edges where maybe some more air can get to it. I don't know. That was all I did with that.
Interesting.
So
I don't think I did anything to care for my burn on the AT except probably just walking around sticking my hands in gross shit all day long. So I guess I feel lucky.
Yeah.
In a way.
Again, that's why it's like the do as I say, not as I do. It's kind of like this is the recommendation.
Honestly, though, while you were sitting here telling me this, even before you started with burns, that incident came to mind, and I was thinking, I'm pretty lucky that didn't get infected before you even brought up the burns. So really don't do as I did. Please.
So if your first aid kit is limited on trail, which I feel like there's a good chance it is because we touched on this a little bit in one of our recent episodes where we were kind of talking about when we're flushing out our packs and how sometimes we pack our fears and, sometimes we may maybe err too much on viewing everything as a wilderness survival situation. So that kind of put my mind in a weird, trying to think of what the balance is here, because obviously you don't want to lug around like a 5-pound first aid kit. But I do think there's some smart choices that you could make. And I do think that I could flesh mine out a little better, because when it comes to first aid, sometimes depending on what the thing is, you don't really have to be that far out for it to escalate. So if anything, I feel like first aid is maybe a decent area to be willing to carry more. So all of that to say that if your kit is limited, you can still just focus on sterilizing enough water to just thoroughly flush the wound and make sure it's dressed and covered. You might be limited on gauze or dressings, but maybe you're someone who carries new skin or super glue. those are options, but I would make sure it's super squeaky clean first. And something else, I've never personally had to use this on a wound, but I'm wondering if you used that, could you leave an opening for fluid drainage rather than just like gluing the entire wound?
I think if you were careful. I have not. My husband's a big fan of super glue in place of stitches.
Yeah.
And I think you could, but you would just have to apply very carefully.
Like, is that necessary? Because with the butterfly bandages and sutures, you have space for fluid drainage. So I'm just like...
I'll ask my husband what he thinks about it, since he's such an experienced super gluer.
And then, ideally, you want to try to change the dressings daily. Again, I'm not sure how many of us... Like, depending on how long you're on trail, you may not have enough supplies to do that, but do your best. And then, most importantly, is the monitoring. Remember to keep an eye out for more severe symptoms. You want to monitor your circulation, your sensation, your movement, the color and temperature of your skin, and just stay on top of it. Kind of the same advice for if you've had a tick bite. Stay on top of it and monitor for symptoms.
Yeah.
I did see it recommended if you have a pen or carry a pen, you could draw a circle around the swollen area to kind of help yourself determine if the infection is spreading versus resolving.
Okay, I've seen people do stuff like that on different sorts of wounds and whatnot.
I have to, like, on snake bites to monitor.
Well, after seeing that guy's foot, it's kind of a mind changer on how seriously you need to take just little bitty cuts and blisters and such. The man is, like, famous now because of his blisters, I feel like, because after you'd sent them to me, I saw them somewhere else. I'm like, oh, this is, like, far-reaching, this disgusting wound.
Cautionary tale.
Yes,
So that's kind of how it works, you know, like one person learns so we don't have to.
Right.
So yeah, again, our regular symptoms are swelling, redness, heat, and pain, but they should be subsiding, not increasing.
Okay.
So that's basically what we're looking for. If you do have a wound get infected on trail, but the infection is still localized to the damaged area, it's not like going crazy, it's just kind of that initial like, oh, this is spreading, you can probably treat that in field. If the edges of the wound have closed, you're going to have to reopen it. Okay, so if you have a wound that has developed a minor infection that is still localized to the area of the wound, you can treat this on trail. If the edges of the wound have closed, you're gonna have to pull them apart, which just made me salivate really hard.
Oh.
You're probably gonna want to find an area where you have a water supply. I don't know, sometimes you may have to just let it ride for a little bit until you can get there, because water is important here. So you're going to have to find somewhere where you can get enough water to soak the area in a warm antiseptic solution if you have it, warm water with a little soap if you have it, or just warm water for 20 to 30 minutes. And then you want to repeat that at least 3 to 4 times a day, which that may be where this guy's kind of talking about fun factor, because it's like, that would be pretty hard on trail.
Yeah.
Like, and it would be frustrating to have to do that, to take the time to do that, but it's like either that or wound vac on the big old gaping hole on your blister, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun. Definitely better than a gaping hole, but I'll be honest with you, that's probably the point. I'm getting off trail.
If I'm having to do that, I'd probably have to be like, you know, I'll come back when I'm not having to deal with this.
Like, how are you ever going to finish if you're truly, like, following protocol and taking good care of your wound? It would take so long.
It would. And if you're on a time crunch, you really don't have a choice.
Right.
So, but that's the protocol for treating a minor infection in the field. If it begins to spread and you see those more severe symptoms, you need to get off the trail. So speaking on getting off the trail, I'm just going to give kind of a good rule of thumb, scenarios where just know you need to leave trail. So if an infection has not improved within 12 to 24 hours, or when you see any of those symptoms that we talked about earlier of systemic infection, get off trail. If you're not able to close your wound on trail, you need to get off trail. If you have a wound that is... Wow, that fly was so loud. He's a fatty. If you have a wound that's over a joint space, is heavily contaminated, is any sort of wild animal bite, is involving an underlying tendon or ligament, is on your face, has an object impaled or embedded in it, or was caused by a crushing mechanism, those are all scenarios when you need to get off trail and seek medical assistance.
Yikes.
Wild animal bites, just as a side note, the concern here isn't rabies. Every animal doesn't have rabies, but if it's an animal bite, like, there's just a lot of bacteria involved. So
yeah,
the rule of thumb is kind of just to preemptively get off trail and deal with it. Like, you're most likely going to that. So
yeah,
it's kind of nice to know those. I feel like most of these are kind of maybe a no-brainer. If this was happening to you, you'd be like, oh God, I gotta go home. But I don't know.
Right.
Again, there's a certain stubbornness that is a necessity for doing some of these difficult outdoor activities, and that stubbornness can translate into stubbornness to actually halt your trip and take care of these things. So
true. So true.
Anyways, that's all I have on infections, guys. There's so much more. I tried to not be completely...
That's super interesting.
Our immune system, I gotta say, shout out to our immune systems because they are incredible.
They really are. I feel like this topic is really timely. I've been reading about our immune systems and various things, so it's just kind of funny that we're doing this now, and I'm loving it. Our immune systems are just beyond believable in a way. I mean, and that they are still somewhat mysterious to why they do the things that they do sometimes. How exactly?
And I think another thing that stood out to me, and maybe why I felt like it was worth kind of talking a little bit about what our immune system is doing, is I feel like something we encounter anytime we learn about some sort of trail ailment is that a lot of the symptoms are similar or the same.
Yeah.
And I guess it never really occurred to me that that's because our immune response is usually the same or similar, you know, like our body's kind of engaging the same forces to battle it, whether it's an allergic reaction or heat stroke or an infection starting. So that kind of, for some reason, was like an aha moment for me when I was putting these notes together. Because sometimes I'm just like, why is everything the same symptoms? How do you know what's even happening?
Yeah, and I guess it can be hard to know sometimes, probably, but I love that you talked about our lymph system because I don't feel like we learn that much about it or hear that much about it. There's starting to be like growing info, and I don't always know what to believe or what not to believe when it comes to that, but it's fascinating to me. I'm interested.
I feel like it's really underappreciated because I barely scratched the surface here. I did read a lot more, and I'm like, holy shit, how did I not know all of this?
Yeah.
And it kind of makes me want to start learning more about, okay, like, how do I actually support this system? Because it's doing so much for me all the time.
Right. And that's not something we talk about a lot.
It's not.
Or explore a lot. And I don't know that much about it. I have been reading some as well. I know my mom deals with headaches some, and she has started using like a specific lymph massage method, and it really helps her with her headaches.
It's incredible.
I know. So I feel like there's almost like a bottomless well when it comes to our immune systems and our lymph systems and how they work. And unfortunately, sometimes we may not like how they work, but really fascinating stuff. So I'm going to be talking about a different type of immune response, and that is allergies, and specifically allergies when we're out in the wild and on the trail. Allergic reactions are, again, just a natural immune response of inflammation that is really just trying to protect you. It's trying to protect your body. When you have an allergic type reaction, your body recognizes that allergen, that trigger, as a danger, as a threat. It tends to overreact. And what happens on the first exposure to an allergen is that your immune system creates antibodies that coat the mast cells in your respiratory system, in your face, places like that where we have these allergic responses often. After that initial exposure to the allergen, these antibodies kind of are just hanging out, waiting for a second exposure. And when that happens, that specific allergen causes these mast cells that are covered in these antibodies to burst and release like huge amounts of histamine. Of course, different levels of histamine depending on how bad the reaction is, but it's that histamine that gives us these body reactions and result in these physical symptoms. So often we'll see these reactions occurring in our respiratory system, on our skin, in our eyes, and even our digestive system, especially if you are dealing with food allergies, which I know can be really tough. So again, some triggers that are common: pollen from trees or from grass, mold, bug bites and stings, plants such as poison ivy, oak, poison sumac. Some other triggers that you might encounter out on trail: campfire smoke can be really inflammatory for people with allergies and or asthma. Dusty or moldy gear can be a big one, which is something you might not think about. You might just be thinking about all the things in nature that are going to bother you, but often for people, it's their gear, it's their tent.
That makes so much sense, and I never would have thought of that.
Right? I know. It's kind of funny. Heat, humidity, cold, all of these things can be triggers. Obviously, food, even exercise, all on its own can be a trigger for some people to have an allergic response. And especially when you couple exercise with another allergen, which kind of makes the perfect storm when you're hiking. So if you're out on trail, you're obviously exercising in that moment. And if you happen to run into an allergen, it can kind of exasperate the situation because exercise tends to want to bring out that inflammatory response, which is interesting. In fact, I've read that some people have gone into anaphylaxis just from exercising, which is kind of hard to plan for, unless you know that you're sensitive to that.
Well, that's terrifying.
I know.
I was going to say, this makes sense to me because I do feel like sometimes within, the first 30 minutes, hour maybe, my nose will run a lot, or sometimes I will get the sneezes when we're out hiking. Exercise
can compound your allergens, your allergic reactions. So just something to be aware of, especially if you're a sensitive person in general. So common signs and symptoms of an allergic reaction. We probably all know these, but running nose, sneezing, itchy watery eyes, congestion, coughing, flushed itchy skin with welts, hives, rashes, nausea, swelling, difficulty swallowing, belly pain, vomiting, diarrhea, respiratory distress, and of course even shock or worse.
I also wouldn't have associated belly issues with allergies, so that's really good to know.
I guess it's pretty common in anaphylaxis that people are having these digestion issues, but I'm not sure that maybe I haven't had digestive issues at times when I was having some allergy trouble and just totally didn't connect the two.
That is so interesting.
Might be something to pay attention to in the future to see if you notice. So I think the biggest thing when you're dealing with allergies out on the trail is just know before you go. Know your own body. Be aware of the allergies that you deal with before you ever hit the trail. If you do struggle with more serious reactions and you've never been tested, it's probably worthwhile to go see your doctor and have some allergy tests done and figure out what your exact triggers are so you don't get yourself in a really dangerous situation, or at least you can be more prepared and more knowledgeable about what could be dangerous for you. Of course, if you have food allergens and sensitivities, you're going to want to bring food items that are safe for you, things that you know that are safe for you. I'm not going to harp on the food allergy too much because I feel like people that deal with that know how to deal with that already. I'm not going to be telling them anything they don't know. So, but of course you're just going to want to pack for yourself and don't share food, things like that. I guess some people have sunscreen allergies, which I didn't really know. It's like a specific type of allergy that people can have. So Even if you don't have a sunscreen allergy, I would say maybe avoid trying new products when you are out on trail, especially if you tend to have sensitive skin, just in case you might have an allergic reaction. Just bring things you know work tried and true for you.
That's a good point.
Also, you need to come prepared. I would say be medicating before you hit the trail if that's something that you feel like is necessary for you. You know what you need. Pack your essentials. Be sure to bring any antihistamine medications that you require, plus probably some extras. Even if you don't deal with allergies, I'd say it's worth bringing some sort of antihistamine just in case.
Yeah, that seems like a staple item.
Yeah, I think it probably should be. I know a lot of people don't deal well with Benadryl. It makes them sleepy. Benadryl is what we call a first-generation antihistamine. It does work well, but there are a lot of second-generation antihistamines that will not make you drowsy. They're not always as strong, and sometimes you kind of have to let them build up in your system before they're as effective as they can be. But a second-generation antihistamine might be something like Claritin, Zyrtec, Allegra. We all know and have heard of these, but they tend to not make you as sleepy. Now, they probably have their own... I know they have their own side effects, so that's something that you just have to pick what works best for you. But I know Benadryl just knocks me out cold, so...
Same. I'm like, is that how it works? It just makes me pass out for like 12 hours, so I don't even know that I have allergies.
No, but it does help that. Many people have luck with nasal sprays or just saline sprays, and there's also prescription, like, corticosteroid nasal sprays that can help folks, and a lot of people do have good luck with those. If you typically may get itchy eyes, eye drops are going to be something wise to bring along. If you are a person that has severe reactions, you probably know this, but you're going to want to bring an EpiPen, and I would recommend to bring 2. And you're going to want to carry them on your person wherever you go. So, like, if you drop pack to go on a little side hike or go to get water, you're going to want to still bring your EpiPens with you.
Go for a tactical wee.
Yes. Both EpiPens need to go tactical weeing with you. And I'll talk about EpiPens and whatnot a little bit later in this conversation when I actually start talking about anaphylaxis. But it is recommended to bring 2. You want to make sure you know how to use them. And I think this is really important, is to make sure others in your group are aware of your allergies and also know how to use an EpiPen. Very important.
Yeah. I would be so intimidated by an EpiPen, to be honest.
Same.
Do I stab this in your neck? What do I do?
Usually the outer thigh will do the trick just fine. And I know a few years ago, EpiPens were just ridiculously priced. But from what I've read, there are kind of more off-brand options that are just as effective that are available now. So that's good news. Yeah. So before you go, you're going to want to do your research on the area that you are visiting. What are the likely allergens in the area? You might consider the seasons and the timing of plant pollination and plan accordingly, such as spring. Tree pollen is common. Summer, grass pollens are common. Fall, you're going to deal with ragweed. Mold, just about all year long. So,
mold.
If you are specifically sensitive to one or the other, you can kind of try to plan your trip around them. That may not work if you're the type of person that wants to hike all the time, but it is an option. Oak pollen really sets a lot of people off, and it has been out in full force, but now it's starting to die back down after a couple weeks. So it doesn't last forever always, at least that really intense part of the season. So you do want to do plenty of research before you go. One way you can do that is to check pollen counts. There's a couple different organizations that offer daily pollen counts in your area online, one of which is the American Academy of Allergy and Asthma. Ooh, which has a website.
That's a lot of A's.
It's a lot of A's, but they have a lot of data on there, and they kind of translate it for you of like, this is what you're going to be dealing with today. And so that is updated daily. That's probably pretty helpful for the folks that just really have the tough seasonal allergies. Another thing you can try is to choose a time of year when allergens aren't as present. So obviously wintertime here in the Ozarks when trees and grasses are not in full bloom. You might also consider planning a trip to an area with less allergens. So while dry air can be triggering for some, like a more desert type atmosphere can be preferential for folks that have a lot of these types of pollen, mold allergies, things like that. So it's a little situation dependent on what exactly triggers you. One of the biggest things they recommend for people wanting to camp out that just have terrible allergies is just to go to the beach, which we are quite landlocked here, not near a beach, but it makes sense, right? There's just not a lot of allergens in the air that are going to affect you. Some people also seem to enjoy pine forests for avoiding allergies and allergens. They kind of tend to have these thick needle floors that kind of block the ground and the allergens at the ground and not a lot of undergrowth.
Wow. Makes sense.
It does, and I love a pine forest, so I'm game.
They may be my favorite.
Right.
Plus, they elevate those killer T cells.
So many good things they do. Another option, if you deal with a lot of nasal allergies and whatnot, is to hike in the rain, which kind of sounds fun.
Well, that sounds like a whole aesthetic in itself, and I kind of want to do it now.
I know. Like, to plan for it by accident, not so fun. Planning for it could be fun. I don't know.
love the idea of planning for a rainy hike.
I know. So the more rain that is present, the less allergens are actually flying around in the air. Windy days are not our friends. You might shoot for windless days. There's less likely to be pollen flying around and just less problematic for your allergies. Now, maybe this is why sometimes you start off stuffy. I don't know, maybe it's exercise, maybe it's a combo of things, but pollen counts do tend to be higher in the early mornings.
Okay.
And while those pollen counts do tend to be higher in the morning, and a lot of people do recommend to save your hikes for a little bit later in the day, other people recommend to get out in it in the morning if it's dewy. Damp, dewy mornings kind of weight the pollen down and it's less likely to be flying around. Dry, windy mornings are no good, but dewy mornings are great for avoiding allergens.
I like the word dewy, by the way. I just love it. It just sounds so nice.
It does. Something else you could do when you're out on trail is just to be mindful of your hands and to avoid touching your face. Lots of hand washing and sanitizer, just because you're going to be constantly encountering and picking up pollen and whatnot every time you touch something. And this sounds intense to me, but if you had reactions bad enough, I could see being open to it with just to wear a mask when you hike. I know we're all tired of that.
Yeah, I do think, when people are really struggling with the more extreme version, like I definitely get allergies, but not near as bad as some people, so I think you just kind of figure out what's going to make it more pleasant for you.
Right, and so much of this is situation dependent. There's so many variables depending on what one person is allergic to as opposed to another, what's in the air and what's not. So you just kind of have to hopefully can find something useful in this information and apply it to your specific situation.
I probably should have been wearing a mask when I was doing the leaf blowing on that one windy day and it was blowing back into my face. That would have been very helpful.
Did it flare you up?
It did.
Yeah.
Terribly.
Well, something you can do to avoid your allergen when you're actually choosing your campsite is just pay attention. If you're allergic to grass pollen, you're probably not going to want to set up tent in the grass. You might choose an area with a little less growth, less trees, if tree pollen is an issue for you. If mold is an issue for you, you might want to stay on the grass and not on bare ground. Or if you have to stay on bare ground, try not to disturb the soil too much because it'll just be releasing mold spores and that's not good. Something that is also an option is to choose hypoallergenic gear. You can find hypoallergenic tents and bedding when you're storing your gear to make sure to keep it in an area with little to no moisture to prevent that mold growth. And people that do tend to suffer with serious allergies are big fans of airing out and cleaning gear, tent before and after every trip, but especially before.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, I guess. I'd say before and after is probably your best bet. Some folks really recommend using a bleach water mix to kill any potential mold spores or mildew spores that are growing on their tent. And I will say, it's hard to keep some mildew from growing on your tent.
Yeah.
Even if you're pretty diligent with drying it out, that's tough. So
much moisture.
So much. So another thing you can do is to try to remove your boots and outerwear clothing well before entering the tent, or if you have like a vestibule, and then just to prevent allergy from bringing those allergens in with you into the tent, which is not something I'd really thought about, but it makes sense. Yeah. And kind of keeping your sleep clothes strictly in your tent so you don't accumulate allergens on those clothes.
Oops.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how you're supposed to do that when you've got to go to the bathroom and things, but that brings to mind another conversation that I want to have with you, but we'll save it for off audio. Wipe down your pets.
Oh, God. I feel like that's how I've gotten poison ivy every single time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I felt like we've talked about that in conversations about your poison ivy. Wipe down your pets before you bring them in your tent. Again, keep those sleeping clothes inside the tent. Try not to wear them outside. And pick a good tent that seals up nicely and keep your flaps closed in the evening while you're sleeping, just to keep out pollen. I know. Keep those tent flaps closed, boys and girls.
Oh, God. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's too much.
No.
It's okay. So, let's talk protecting ourselves from insects and poisonous plants. Full coverage clothing are going to do a pretty good job of protecting you from both. I know that sounds hot and miserable in the summer, but if you choose good versatile options, they don't have to be miserable, even full coverage in the summertime.
Yeah.
If you do accidentally come in contact with some of these poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac type plants, your best bet is just going to be wash vigorously with soap and water as soon as possible. It may be worth carrying some type of corticosteroid cream or anti-itch cream to deal with those reactions, especially if you know that you're sensitive. Yeah. I'm kind of lucky. I don't tend to react to plants, but never say never. And it's never too late.
I really need to get more familiar with what poison sumac looks like, because I can spot ivy and oak from a mile away, but I'm not all that familiar with poison sumac.
You are fairly sensitive to the stuff, right?
Yes.
Do you carry some sort of cream with you?
I carry a Benadryl cream.
Mm-hmm.
And, it works pretty well. I will say, I don't even know if you can, develop immunity eventually. I've always told that to myself, maybe eventually I'll get immune. Mm-hmm. I haven't had as much of a struggle the last couple years, whereas in the past I've had bad poison ivy.
Yeah, well, that's good.
So, I'm hoping.
I think it's feasible.
Maybe my little memory cells were just a bit sluggish, but they finally got their shit together, and they're like, oh.
We gotta calm down.
Okay, bird. It's okay.
I wanted to ask you, because I'm not as familiar with dealing with that type of rash and stuff. Do you have any pointers?
So I have tried everything under the book, and I've tried several things that I'm not going to recommend because I know they weren't good, but I was desperate. Yeah. I will say something I have found super effective, and I don't know why it took me so long to think of this, is camphophenique, which you usually use for cold sores, which are unfortunately another thing I seem to love to get when I'm stressed. They're the best things for cold sores. They dry them right up, so You know, when I get a poison ivy rash, the biggest issue sometimes is getting it to get to the drying stage. Mm-hmm. And I have used the pink calamine. It's not ideal for going out in public. I've used a couple other things, but I honestly feel like the last couple times I got it, I cleaned it really well. A lot of times I will use rubbing alcohol initially, mm-hmm. and then Campho-Phenique dried it up faster than anything else I have ever tried. So
wow.
I'm not saying it'll work for you, and I honestly haven't even looked into whether or not it's a good thing to put on it. So, do your research. But personal experience, that's been the most effective.
Interesting. It's a little bottle.
It's so tiny, but it doesn't take a whole lot.
Yeah.
So depending on how much you have, I mean, sometimes you can get into it bad.
It might be worthwhile bringing if you were going to be on a trail for a long time, though.
Yeah.
I don't know, because it can treat different things. I think my grandpa stuck that stuff on about everything, so...
I could see it, helping kind of, dry up a particularly oozy bug bite, too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what was happening.
Kind of sounds nice on a really itchy bug bite. Slap some of that stuff on there. That smell reminds me so much of my grandpa, though.
I love it, personally.
I like it, too. You can try to avoid bites and stings by... not smelling like a flower, not using strongly scented personal items, and maybe just try to shoot for unscented.
B.O.
Yeah. Avoiding sweet beverages. Yellow jackets and other flying stinging bugs like to get into those. You might especially avoid cans where you may not actually see the bug that's flown down in there. I think that's one of the most common ways people get stings, though, is from sweet drinks.
Ow.
And also by walking barefoot, which I love to do at home, but you might not want to try that out on trail. Not just for stinging bugs. I'd say there's probably other good reasons not to go barefoot on trail.
Snakes. And it's difficult to get your feet any sort of clean on trail.
Yeah. You risk cutting yourself, infections, all these things. But it is a good way to avoid stings on your foot. It's just wearing shoes. And it's also recommended, of course, to clean up food and trash as soon as possible around campsite that might attract those kind of stinging insects and whatnot. And you might choose to wear repellent. So again, I'm not going to lecture you folks with food allergies because you know way better than I do what it's like to deal with that. But I think it's just a great idea to let other people in your group be aware of your allergens, probably whether they're food or bugs or pollen or anything, just so we can keep close eye on one another. So something else I brought up earlier, but I want to expand upon just a little bit, is that if you are sensitive to allergies or if you have asthma, it's probably a good idea to avoid campfire smoke. Smoke from wood can contain pollen and can contain mold, and when it gets burned up, it can be released in the air. So you might consider just skipping the fire altogether and bringing fuel stoves, which we like to do anyway. So it's kind of interesting.
And what if you threw a log on there that you didn't know had poison ivy on it? What would happen then? What happens if you inhale poison ivy smoke?
I've heard bad things, but I don't know.
I've never experienced it. I don't want to. I'm just... Oof.
Yeah, I feel like it sounds like it could be dangerous, but... Yeah. There are some natural remedies that people seem to like to deal with allergies. So stinging nettle is a plant that people use to help alleviate histamine response. Honey is a big one because it often actually contains the allergens. So it's kind of like slowly exposing yourself to it over time. People like to even bring little honey on trail to keep up with their dosage. Vitamin C can be helpful. Quercetin, I believe that's how you pronounce it, is found in a lot of foods, but you can also buy it as a supplement. It has been shown to help fight histamine response as well. Bromelain is another one, which we find that in pineapples, but you can buy it as a supplement, and also probiotics.
Gonna have to make a lot more kombucha.
Yes, and some kimchi and things too. I personally believe that these natural remedies do offer help for some folks and remedy for some folks. I wouldn't just go try them for the first time on trail and assume that they're going to take care of your allergies or prevent your allergies from happening. It might be something you want to experiment with at home.
I kind of imagine some of those more natural things too might be more effective as, like, you gotta let it maybe build up over time.
You do.
And be really consistent with that instead of trying to use it as a treatment.
You absolutely do. That's a great way to put it, is to maybe not try to use those things as treatment, but just long-term preventative.
Yeah.
You know, and so you're going to have to ingest long-term as well. So some other kind of natural options you can use to maybe just kind of fight them off, or just to keep yourself healthier in the face of allergies: drink lots and lots and lots of water. And you might consider, again, bringing some salt, which I love that you brought that up earlier, because making a small batch of saline water and flushing your eyes and nose can be really helpful just to get that shit out of there.
Yay. I love that tie-in.
I know. Bring salt.
Bring salt.
I mean, I feel like now it's almost a requirement for our first aid kits, considering we have it on both of our notes for completely different situations. So
whenever I went hiking and took Kenai, I did bring like the tiniest little vial of saline solution, but if it were to do with a wound, it wouldn't be enough to do anything. So it's like, okay, bringing some salt would maybe be the more weight effective way to go. And I didn't even think about that.
Pretty easy thing to do, I think.
Yeah.
So now that we've kind of talked about some simple ways of hopefully avoiding reactions and dealing with them if you do have them, I do want to talk just for a little bit about the most serious form of reaction, which is anaphylaxis. So what that is an entire body, whole body response. It's a widespread histamine release, and it can result in a sudden fall in blood pressure. Symptoms can include skin rashes, nausea, vomiting again, coughing, getting scarier here, swelling of the tongue, tightness in chest, wheezing, dizziness, fainting, difficulty breathing, and shock. If anaphylaxis is not treated right away, which it's usually treated with epinephrine, the EpiPens, it can result in unconsciousness or death. So, if you're in a group where someone might be dealing with anaphylaxis, call 911 right away, even if they have an EpiPen, even if they use the EpiPen and they're already starting to feel better. They're going to want to go to emergency room if they've gone through anaphylaxis at all. In the meantime, you can have the person lay down and elevate legs. If they are unable to administer their own epinephrine, hopefully they've informed you as their friend or partner that how to inject it for them, and it's usually done in the outside of the thigh. It's important to not hesitate to use the EpiPen, which happens a lot. People kind of waver back and forth like, oh, I don't know if I really need it or not. That delay can actually result in really bad outcomes and is associated with death. Just delaying the EpiPen. Kind of scary.
That is scary.
Well, there's a few reasons why I said to bring 2 EpiPens if that's something that you require. Sometimes 2 doses are required to see a respite from symptoms. One may be not enough to see the reaction subside. Or sometimes these anaphylactic reactions do this really neat, fun thing where they may subside and then resurface hours or even days later.
Oh, no.
I know. Like, how terrible. Even though you may have been injected and are doing just fine, hours or days later, it can come back on you from the same exposure. It's not a new exposure, it's the same exposure. So it's always a good idea to have that second pen. Hopefully, if you've had to be injected with the first one, you're on your way to a hospital somewhere. But just in case, it's probably good to have 2. Also, there has been occurrences where the EpiPens did not function correctly.
Oh, yeah.
So,
that makes sense too.
It is absolutely a life or death situation, and you probably don't want to be out in the wilderness with just one EpiPen. So if you do go through an anaphylactic episode, or your friend does, you need to monitor symptoms. And if things get more serious, be prepared to perform CPR if necessary. And again, you want to visit the ER ASAP, even if the episode does subside. Now, this is something I was really curious about, and I probably did way too much digging into this and took up too much time. And I never got really a great straight answer. But what to do if someone has an anaphylactic episode and they do not have an EpiPen on them? What are you supposed to do? I really had no idea, but I was curious. So it turns out that antihistamine medications such as Benadryl, Zyrtec, all these things, they can help a little bit with anaphylaxis. They're really not effective, which is scary.
Yeah, great.
So I've just tried to do all this research. Like, what do you do if you don't have an EpiPen, if you need one? And there's no great answer. The most I found was to maybe try to administer antihistamine drugs and hope for the best, that maybe they'll relieve symptoms enough that you could make it to a hospital. But they're really not geared to deal with that whole body histamine response. A possible option would be to try to get, you can get liquid or dissolving Benadryl, which is, it's faster acting.
Yeah.
That might be the best bet in that situation. And it's kind of made me think, well, maybe I could get some, because I do carry Benadryl, maybe I can get some dissolving tablets. For any allergic reaction, probably the faster it kicked in, the happier you're going to be, So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have on hand. But epinephrine is the one and only thing that will treat anaphylaxis, truly. Don't go anywhere without your EpiPen if that's something that you need. But it is kind of scary to think, well, what if, someone didn't know they needed it, or...
Right, and going back to knowing now that you could get anaphylaxis from exercise and
right,
all in together. Oh, great.
Chances are, if you're treating your other allergies, with your antihistamines and stuff, it's less likely to create that perfect storm of exercise with allergy. But it is possible still, so...
And I guess that's just kind of another scenario where it's something that maybe... Because for me, I've dealt with it off and on, and it's something I probably just minimize because I'm so used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure other people that suffer even more than me might minimize it as well. But it's sort of another one of those things where it's this small thing could turn into a big issue. So I guess it comes full circle back around to being really honest with yourself. And like you said, if you are someone that suffers really bad with allergies, kind of knowing your area and knowing which allergies is useful information.
Right. Get in your lane kind of a thing and find your sweet spot and find what works for you.
Not going from 0 to go. I assume if you're you live maybe in the country like us and you're getting out and you're walking and you're exposed to these things and taking a walk at home doesn't seem to have a huge impact on you. You might be a little safer, but maybe if you have terrible chronic allergies and you don't move a whole lot, don't just run out into the woods and start backpacking.
Probably not a great idea. I did think it was interesting. Some people tend to avoid hiking in new environments or atmospheres because they fear that there'll be unknown allergens that could really trigger them, but it's actually less likely if you're hiking in a totally kind of new environment. You probably haven't even been exposed to those allergens yet, so your body hasn't got time to hate them and decide that they're the enemy yet. So sometimes going to a totally new atmosphere or new environment can be a good thing. Doesn't mean you shouldn't bring your medication, of course, or whatever that you like to use. But I thought that was kind of interesting. It makes sense.
That's interesting.
You kind of have to be exposed to it before your body decides that it doesn't like it.
I don't like you.
Yeah, next time you come over, I'm going to kick your ass. Right. That's what your mast cells say.
You made a terrible first impression, Colin. You're not welcome here anymore.
That pretty much summarizes what I had researched about allergies. I hope there's something useful in there for you guys. I don't know. So.
It's funny how the more you know, the more there is to kind of be afraid of. But simultaneously, knowledge is power. So it's like, I'm really happy to know these things.
Right.
It just kind of reevaluate. But also it does slowly start eliminating the unknowns. Like the more and the more that we learn about all of this, the more I feel like it'll get easier and easier to kind of recognize what an issue is. I don't know. Process of elimination, I guess.
I love that. And I think that's important for some of the things that we're wanting to do. I kind of wonder, and I don't really know, I've never asked, like if you're in like a tour group or some things like that, like some sort of adventure group, do facilitators bring EpiPens?
That's a really good question. I would kind of imagine that they would, wouldn't you?
I don't know that I would feel comfortable bringing people out in the woods without one.
Right.
On my watch.
Yeah.
In my care.
Exactly.
So that kind of opened up a new
that's
line
a really
of thought
good
for me too.
I mean, I feel like I had some basic knowledge about infections, and I'm well aware that small things can turn into them, but still, that was not an area of my gear that I've really put a whole lot of forethought into. There's a little bit. I kind of know what I need in some ways, but there's a lot of this stuff that I don't feel like it would add that much weight or be a hassle to carry, so it's kind of like, why don't I carry this?
Yeah. Well, now we're learning and getting terrified and like, okay. No, we just want to be more prepared, I think. I will say I haven't been the kindest to my first aid kit. I make my own, and I think it's okay, but honestly, it's just been more about shaving it than...
I know, me too.
And that's not the way to go either.
Well, and even just like having a pair of latex gloves in there. That weighs basically nothing, but that could be, it's such an important part of, being able to have clean hands when you're dealing with your wounds. Like, I don't know.
Right.
I'm just like, oh, yeah, okay. It is kind of sobering to think about these things, and I think it's good to know ahead of time. Like, you don't want to just be, terrified the entire time.
No.
But it does happen. Like, I will say from personal experience, I did have a case of poison ivy one time that got very badly infected. I just couldn't seem to dry it up. I probably scratched it way too much and, really broke the skin open, and it was on my leg, and I ended up, like, my entire leg was swollen, was, like, scorching hot to the touch, and, it's like, it was just poison ivy. Like, I don't know. I just could have definitely dealt with that situation better. It didn't need to escalate to that degree.
It's like when our topics collide, you have an allergic reaction, you scratch it, and it gets infected.
Right? Boom.
I know. So many things can go wrong so quickly. And I think I've always assumed that they wouldn't, but I like this more planned preparation and less, like, generic... like, here's a bag of first aid stuff. Right. And actually, like, taking time to really consider the possibilities of things, and not to be terrified of them, but to be more prepared for them specifically.
Yeah. I know, I love that.
It's exciting.
I feel like having that forethought and just, like, sense of direction about what you're bringing and why. Like I said, we don't want to be afraid all the time, but I feel like having put the thought into that and actually considering it as a possibility of a thing happening. It doesn't have to mean that you're just assuming the worst that's going to happen, but if it does, I feel like there's less panic involved.
Yes.
And you can just respond to it in the right way, right off the bat, without being like, oh my god.
Well, you might actually have what you need. And a lot of first aid kits, I feel like, are kind of crappy. And you might not have what you need.
It's all about blisters, honestly, in the backpacking world. And they're a huge part of it. And as we've seen, they can turn into something worse. But there's so many other things.
So true.
And something I didn't really mention, but another one that might be pretty common, I would think, on trail would be to maybe get, like, an ingrown toenail or a toenail issue that could get infected really easily.
I could see that happening.
What are the statistics? Who's had the toe rot off? Tell us.
Oh, God. Bless your heart.
Well, wow. Wow.
Did we do it? I don't know. Was it any good?
Dude, I had to look down at one point, like 3/4 in. You know how sometimes you get that sudden panic that it wasn't recording the entire time?
Was it?
It was.
Oh,
Thank
good.
goodness.
So I hope you guys can get something out of this information and maybe kind of hone in your first aid, or just maybe open our eyes to exactly the issues that could arise on trail, you know, like really specifically, which is kind of, I don't know. I think it's, in a way, removing that unknown kind of takes some of the fear out of it too. Like if we know if we know that what can happen and how to deal with it, like I just feel much more competent and prepared.
I do too.
Not more scared.
Yeah.
More aware.
I feel more confident in my own abilities to know how to manage some of these things.
Same.
And I also think it's maybe a good idea to shift the focus. Like, if we are going to think about things that could happen on trail, it's probably good to shift the focus sometimes to this smaller but maybe more realistic things. Mm-hmm. Because maybe sometimes we're thinking more about, like, oh, what if I fell and broke my leg? And yes, that could happen too, but I do feel like a lot of these things might be more likely to happen also because we may not just give them as much weight to begin with.
Right.
You know, we're maybe thinking, what if I drown or break a leg or
right.
fall off the
bears.
mountain? Yeah, bears.
Right. Yeah. When the reality is you're probably more likely to get an infected blister, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe not one like that poor unfortunate soul on Facebook did.
He's
but
going in the show notes, bless him.
he needs to. Well, thanks guys for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it, and come back for more Trailments another day.
Yes, and send us your most disgusting, intense, freakish stories about injuries.
Send pictures.
Yeah, please. Well, I think that went pretty well. Thank you for riding on the magic school bus.
Frizz is out. Oh, what are we going to say? Like, we want to tell you guys that we're going to get better.
We're going to get better. We promise.
We might not, though.
We won't.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Gosh, I'm salivating so much. I feel like I'm just giving a presentation in school. Why am I such a square? Shortness of breast. I don't know why my mind just went. I wanted to say that. Hey, airplane, shut up.
It works out because I'm probably going to cut that shit out anyway, but not all of it.
I swear, this has been the noisiest day down here.
What's the deal?
One time, I tried to come down here and be cool. I don't know what's with these weird voices I'm doing today.
I enjoy them. Please keep them up.